This is the Parents Who Think debate show. Today is episode 3 and the close of our Should Parents Let Their Underage Children Drink Alcohol debate. If you're a fan of PWT debates and have been following how they go, you'll know there's still lots of surprises to come. Are you new here? Well, welcome too. Regulars would probably say to go listen to episodes 1 and 2 of this debate. And obviously that'll give you the full experience. You'd meet the 3 PWT parents properly and hear about their opinions on this topic. Meantime, I'll try to sum up this debate so far in one sentence for you. Bear with me, it's quite long. Facilitates supervised exposure of alcohol to young children to reduce rebellion and encourage responsible drinking, or risk early exposure that leads to higher risk of developing alcohol dependence, risky behaviours and damaged health later in life. That was a big sentence. I'm Danusia Malina-Derben. I'm in conversation with 3 parents, all with what they think are progressive opinions about this debate topic. They've shared why they believe parents must let their underage children drink alcohol. They've also shared why parents shouldn't condone or facilitate children drinking alcohol while growing up, and the reasons for this. It's a multi-layered discussion covering genetics, parental beliefs and childhood experiences, differences between white culture and black culture, and alcohol, plus lots more. My guests all care for the safe upbringing of their children into the adult world. Where they differ is about what that world might be like and how to educate children about it. For Dave, after 4 decades of drinking that affected everything across his life, including his relationship to his son, in some ways, there's no circumstances ever that warrant giving alcohol to children, not even to try to educate them. Casey can't see why not, since she experienced acute demonization of alcohol to the point where she was terrified yet tempted by it. In episode 2, she told us about her teenage alcoholism and how this makes her sure that secrecy about alcohol isn't helpful. Kiaya is a latecomer to drinking herself because of her Christian upbringing. She's determined to break what she calls slave descendant genetic codes around what's taboo for her and her family. Educating her children around alcohol is something she takes seriously as part of this. Here's a few words from Kiaya, Dave and Casey, then we'll move on to hear these guests get into the if this then that segment and onto the one habit they have because of their opinions. I close out this debate by spilling the tea on whether I think parents should let their underage children drink alcohol. Yep, I'll be showing up as the flawed parent that I can be whether you chime with or disagree with my opinions. This is a tough topic for me, as you'll have realised if you've followed the previous 2 episodes. On the one hand, I speak as a person who has been alcohol-free for 5 years. On the other, I'm a parent who wants to prepare my children for the world they will step into as adults. Not the utopian one I might wish they were going to be part of. I find this hard. Now, Parents Who Think is for sure a place for scrappy-edged, imperfect humans and our contrasting and contradictory views on tough topics. Let's hear from my guests. Here's Casey, who became a teen alcoholic.
Now, ultimately, I don't drink much, but I allow myself to have a cocktail with friends or whatnot if I enjoy it. So I don't feel like I ultimately ended up in a bad place as an adult, but I went through some really difficult moments to get here. And I think that if we don't demonize drinking to our children, and if we don't mystify alcohol to our children, then we don't set our children up to become sneaky little sleuths who get themselves into trouble and into pain or worse. I think if we trust our children to be thoughtful and mature around big issues like alcohol, I think they can be. And I think that if we as adults are prudish and afraid, we raise fearful and eventually rebellious children. So making things taboo for children will ultimately only harm them in the long run. I feel that is true, and I've experienced that truth in my own life. But I sure wish that I had grown up in a house where it was okay to have a glass of champagne on New Year's Eve and that nobody was judging you for it and you were not afraid that it was a slippery slope and that your whole life was going to fall apart if you took that first sip.
You know, we get the labels on the bottles from Drink Aware that say, drink responsibly. On fag packets, there's photographs all over them of people with black lungs and dying and tubes coming out of them. On a bottle, you just get drink responsibly. So basically what these huge drink companies are saying, oh, it's up to you if you want to drink too much. It's not our fault. Give us your money, you know? And it's just such a wrong message. Drinking alcohol gave me a sense of purpose and belonging, I think. But what happened is it's progressive. And the longer I drank, the more I wanted to drink and I needed the drink. And then it isolated me. And I became a solitary drinker that had literally no life at all. And this is why I feel so passionate about getting the message out there about the harms of alcohol.
So if my little people would ask, Daddy, can I taste that? He would just hand them, the cup with the straw and just let them, draw some in. They typically turn up their face. They don't like it, but we would allow it. If I had something, I'm a little different. He doesn't always offer it. I, on the other hand, would be like, you want to taste? Would you like to taste this? This is called so-and-so. It's made with so-and-so and so-and-so. It's kind of sweet. Want to taste it? So I'm going to say, try this, because I may be a little extra when it comes to ensuring that my children are exposed. So yes, while social drinking is becoming something that's really, really big and in some circles a concern, well, I also don't want to say you can't socially drink, because when you become an adult, you're going to decide what it is that you want to do. I want you to be equipped to do whatever it is that you decide to do.
In episodes 1 and 2, we heard vulnerable stories from all 3 guests. This debate is based on storytelling in a much more sustained way than previous debates. The link between their childhoods and how they now treat underage children and alcohol is tightly woven. It's a raw picture guests paint, and in many ways, a humbling one. The next segment is crucial because we can skip over it or not even consider it as something that's important. In PWT, we call it if this then that, because in any strong belief we hold, we have a picture or idea of what the consequences are of allowing something to be or happen. For instance, if we let our 3-year-old hit other children, they may get hit back or find it difficult to make friends. That this is hitting other kids, and that is finding it hard to have friends or getting hit back. Our behaviour has impacts. The essence of this segment is about the consequences of actions, beliefs, or decisions. I asked my guests if this, then that, about underage children drinking alcohol. So if parents don't let their underage kids drink alcohol, what will the consequences of that be if they don't let their underage kids experiment?
You never know what the consequences of not experimenting would lead to. They could be a very strong-willed person like me and just decide that I'm not going to go down that road because everybody expects me to go down that road. Or they could be the one that goes buck wild, like everybody expects them to go buck wild whenever they come out of their very strict household. They always said when my mother's named children would leave, they're going to go buck wild. Some did. I didn't, because that's not who I wanted to be. Could I? Yes, because I left Louisiana, went way far. I was the only one that went the farthest away. Everybody else stayed in Louisiana, went to Arkansas. I went to Florida, but I maintained like who I wanted to be. I had decided from young who I wanted to be and who I didn't want to be. My husband says to this day, I have these moral standards that are just out of this world. And you cannot, unless I decide to change my mind, you cannot change my mind. This is what I believe in.
This is about extreme responses. They can go many ways. Unpredictable, right? And for Kiaya, it's also about choosing who you want to be.
Because remember, every little person who becomes a big person is an individual of them own selves. And they will become who they're going to become based off of how they receive certain information.
I asked Casey this. So if this, then that, if parents let their underage children drink alcohol, what's the consequence? What is the nub of that consequence for the kids?
I think if parents let underage children drink alcohol in small quantities, supervised, I think that children can learn not to be afraid of it. I also think a lot of children are not going to like the taste of it. I think a lot of children are going to have their first sip of beer and go, ew. And because a lot of things have sort of an acquired taste, coffee is a great example as well, the kids are going to say, no, thanks, right? And then they're not going to be all that curious about it because they tried it and they've thought, not for me. It's yucky. My dad and my uncle and whoever likes to drink this, but it's not for me. And the mystery and the taboo and the whispering about it that ultimately can make it alluring or interesting, it just goes away. It becomes a non-issue.
Now, obviously, your story is a testament to parents not letting their underage children drink alcohol. So you've really answered that one. Look at what happens.
Right. I think ultimately this is all big topics that should be spoken about freely in homes. When we refuse to talk about it or we demonize it or we shame our children around something that they haven't even done yet, it doesn't prevent them from experimenting with that thing. It prevents them from being able to talk to you as a parent when they need you around this topic. I don't see how that helps children who are becoming young adults if they know that the big things that they're coping with or curious about are things they're not allowed to talk about at home.
I asked Dave the same question. So if we, as parents, let our underage children drink alcohol, what is the consequence of that?
Well, there's lots of consequences. There's loads. What I said to you before about the increased addiction risk, right, with the Russian roulette, we don't know, do we? We're gambling with that. Early exposure to alcohol can increase the likelihood of dependence. And these days, substance misuse, like a lot of drug taking, cocaine, starting like that. It makes people at a younger age, it's more difficult for them to control their drinking habits as they get older. So that could be like me as an example, in my teens, clubbing, but in my 20s, went to a local pub and it was just part of my life, like eating and sleeping. As I said before, how would we feel if our kids went on and developed a dependency? It'd be awful. Serious health issues. I was a prime example. I know I'm an extreme, but I've worked with women that drink a couple of glasses of wine a day or blokes that go to the pub and have 3 or 4 beers every night. But when you add it up, that's way over the recommended units. Risky behaviours, unprotected sex, legal problems, mental health problems. Alcohol's a depressant and it increases anxiety, poor academic performance. If a kid's drinking or getting in at 3 a.m, whatever they're doing, right, it's going to affect their schooling, right? Lower grades, bunking off school, less likelihood of pursuing a higher education. Then there's damaged relationships, friendships, girlfriends or boyfriends, parents, relationship with parents. The kids can become secretive, argumentative, withdrawn, leading into lack of communication with their parents, increased accident risk.
Dave gave us one hell of a list of consequences there. His take is clear.
So I think it's important to really look at our relationships with alcohol and see how it does affect our lives, because you don't have to be waking up every morning with a hangover to have a problem with it.
Does this mean that children witnessing parents drinking is negative?
Seeing that our parents are using alcohol to unwind, to openly say in front of the family, I've had such a bad day, I need a drink. I've had a really good day today. I might have a drink to celebrate. I've had a normal day, but I'm a bit bored. Just have a drink. That all goes in.
Final words in this If This Then That segment go to Kiaya, where she talks about the consequences of parents letting their underage children drink alcohol.
You never know. You really don't. As a parent, this is, I actually hate hearing this. But the fact of the matter is, I am a person. Parents are just people. And as a person, you can only do the best that you know to do. And that's all you can do. You can't do any better than that. If you're not pouring into yourself, the best you can do is all that you are up until this point. And then you have to release those little people to go and be grown people. You have to. Well, that's a different conversation. But at some point, they may want to leave. And I think you should let them go. If they decide that I never experienced drinking, one can only hope that when they decide to experience it, that it's not detrimental. A lot of times, while we may see a large number of reportings, sometimes when you look at the number of reports based off of the population, it's not high. It's just in your face. But to answer your question, you never really know the consequences.
Indeed. We can never be sure of the consequences of our choices. We may be doing our best by keeping kids away from alcohol, but that might intensify their interest in it. Equally, we could find that pouring sips or drinks for underage kids might not teach them about responsible drinking, even if we wanted to. The consequences for each child in a family could also be different. It's not like there's a formula that'll work, is there? Now let's move on to the next segment, where we discover what one habit guests have because of their opinion on this topic. Our beliefs influence our behaviour and determine our actions. What habits come from my guests' beliefs? Here's me asking Casey. What's the one habit you have because of your opinion on this?
Some of them I think are still habits based on shame. I never have more than 2 drinks in a day because I wonder what people will think about me. And I never drink at all in front of baby boomer relatives because they still make me feel like a delinquent kid or a morally bankrupt adult who never learned the harsh lesson that they were trying to teach me. And so I still feel restricted when it comes to alcohol. And that has become a habit.
So restraint.
Yeah. And unnecessary restraint, right? Like, I know that, like, I'm not interested. I don't really like feeling buzzed or whatever else. Like, if feeling a little bit relaxed after a glass of wine, getting ready for bed, that can be an enjoyable ancillary effect of alcohol. And yet, that restraint around allowing myself to enjoy that feeling or allowing myself to have that third glass of wine when I'm on a vacation or a cruise ship or whatnot, because there's that little voice in the back of my head that says, normal people might have a drink, or 2, but anybody who has 3 or more is a drunk.
Now, in being a foster parent, has alcohol come up as a question, as an area of kind of scrutiny or anything like that?
And interestingly, to become a licensed foster parent, where I live, you absolutely have to keep alcohol under lock and key. And so when my husband and I decided we wanted to become foster parents, we had a bit of alcohol in the house, a few bottles of wine and a couple of spirits for mixing drinks, things like vodka or whatnot. And we actually put them in a box and locked them up in the basement. And then all of the other sort of opened bottles of alcohol, we either poured down the drain or we gave away to our friends, because there are licensing rules around not having access to alcohol in your home if you're a foster parent. And so we got rid of most of it.
The foster parent rules are tight where Casey and her husband live. So presumably that feeds into the whole narrative of alcohol being bad.
Isn't it? It's interesting, right? And I totally understand. I would never criticize the child welfare system for not wanting to bring children who've been through abuse or neglect or various forms of trauma into a home where they could potentially harm themselves. It's no different than the fact that we we make sure that there's not a bottle of Tylenol laying out, that a child could access without foster parent supervision. And so I understand that. But I do remember when we were going through the process of kind of feeling that same sort of like taboo shame coming again, like, oh, there's these people, there's this organization coming in and telling us whether or not we are good enough to be parents, and telling us, slapping us on the wrist, like no alcohol, which really just goes right back to that feeling that I had as a child.
I asked Casey about her brothers drinking. They'd sunk into drinking to escape the pressures of caregiving for their mother during her depression and anorexia.
And we're both incredibly lucky, right? That we can talk about this and look back and say, like, we had a bit of a alcoholism problem in our teen years, in our early 20s even, and then realized that we were only kind of into it for the allure of it. And I think neither of us really truly became addicted in any way or dependent upon it in any way. And so it was really, fortunately, pretty easy, I think, for both of us to go from that sort of teenage binge drinking thing to having a very mature relationship with alcohol and enjoying a cocktail every now and then socially. So yeah, I think we got out relatively unscathed in the end, but I don't think that was necessarily a given. I think we got lucky.
Casey's habit is to restrict her alcohol consumption. She still lives with the impact of her childhood. We'll return to her recovery from teen alcoholism, but first, here's Kiaya.
Well, whenever I initially was thinking about that, the more specific thing that I could come up with is what I've already mentioned, which is I can tell you every time I have a glass of wine at home, I ask my children if they want to taste it. Everything is education in my house, but a habit that I have, even with kombucha, do you want to taste this? That's my habit on a lot of things. Do you want to try this? You want to taste this? You want to try this? That is something I habitually do with every glass of wine. And then if we're out to dinner and I decide to have like a mixed drink, I would again ask, would you like to taste this? Sometimes they'll taste it. And then again, I always say, what did you think? And then it becomes, what did you taste? And these are little people. So what did you taste? What did you think? Well, and then it becomes a lesson for my little people.
Earlier in this debate, Kiaya said she's cross if anyone else offers her children alcohol.
I take it hard when someone beats me to the punch with my children for worldly things. So I kind of take it personal when someone has to teach my child something that I haven't taught them. I'm really hard on myself about it. And it's like, I kind of feel like I missed the mark. And I know that that's some things I'm working on with my therapist, but I take it personal. I don't like for my children to be indoctrinated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like for them to be able to decide on some things, decide on their path, decide on their belief system. I want to be able, I'm quite sure we have influence over them as their parents. There is some indoctrination, but I want them to be able to say, this is what I decided to do. There are no clear cases. There are individuals that you're given information to or not given information to, and then they will be who they're going to be. It's not clear cut. And so if you're giving them a taste and they turn to alcohol and become alcoholics, what was missed? There was something else there that should have been dealt with, based on what I know about alcoholics.
Dave told me his habit because of his opinions on underage kids drinking alcohol.
Well, I'm quite a stickler for not having any alcohol in my house, right? I won't have it in my house and I won't buy it for anyone. So if I was coming to you for dinner, I wouldn't be bringing wine. Mind you, you don't drink anyway. But I would buy flowers or chocolate. I just refuse to buy it. I really do. I don't want anything to do with it. And if anyone comes over and they want to drink, that's up to them. Bring their own. And if a family came over with teenage kids and suggested to have a couple of drinks, I would have my own boundaries around that. And I wouldn't ever want to encourage it in my home. It's up to them what they want to do in theirs. But in mine, I just wouldn't encourage it at all.
No alcohol in your home?
Absolutely. My one habit is no alcohol anywhere near my home. Thank you, ma'am. It's a firm boundary. And, you know, I've got firm boundaries around other relationships as well. But one of the best things from stopping drinking is that I've learned self-worth and self-value, and I don't put up with any crap anymore, where I did all my life because I had no self-worth. So boundaries to me are everything in life, not just with drinking, but in life. And I can be flexible, but there are certain things I'm not flexible with, and that's really important for me.
Many people associate the word boundary with something negative. They think that setting particular boundaries for kids implies not taking their opinions and feelings into account. But that just isn't the case. In fact, setting boundaries is an important part of parenting because children need reliably enforced norms, rules, and guidelines for their lives. This process signifies structure, regulation, and teaching, but it doesn't imply disrespect. I wanted Dave to talk more about the link between kids, alcohol, and boundaries.
I think they could tie in together, right? Because the parents shouldn't be saying you can't drink, you do not drink, because most kids are going to go against that. But I think it's giving them a healthy education so they can then have their own experience around it, or they know enough to decide what they want to do. So they're emotionally developed around the subject. And that's also boundaries as well, isn't it? Like having boundaries with certain things in life, whether it's eating too much McDonald's or drinking or relationships. I think it's good to educate our children about boundaries from an early age.
All my guests agree about educating children about alcohol, whether that's about the harms of it or different ways to drink responsibly. Parental and caregiver guidance is at the heart of this education. In episode 1, I dished the dirt on my relationship with alcohol in my family as I grew up and as I raise my 10 children. In this last word segment, I'll share whether I think parents should let underage children drink alcohol. Of course, I'm not going to say what you should do. That's your business. I've come a long way from the days when I'd ask my young adult kids to trek to the local mini supermarket to buy me a bottle of Prosecco. They knew that most nights I'd drink wine because I was into the mummy wine culture that convinced me I'd work damn hard in the day juggling career and kids. What's the harm in a relaxing glass or 3? Mother's Day gifts included coasters with Prosecco Queen on them and bottles of champagne. But I didn't even then encourage any of my children to drink alcohol. If by chance one showed interest in my drink, I would allow them a sip, but it came from them, not me. To be honest with you, I felt that my bubbles were one of the only things I had in my life that was just for me. It sounds pathetic, but that was how I felt it was. 5 years on, and those times are memories, and my triplets can't remember their mum ever drinking at all. Which brings me to them. Will they be underage alcohol drinkers? No, they won't, as long as I have anything to do with it. I don't believe that we should continue the narrative that it's inevitable that all adults drink alcohol. Why are we assuming that alcohol must be part of life? I'd like to see alcohol taken off its pedestal and not seen as a privilege of being an adult. I don't see it as a privilege. It's a huge responsibility. If alcohol wasn't treated as a given, we might not be so eager to teach children about drinking. But alcohol companies profit from addiction and from the assumption that life and alcohol are a marriage made in heaven. They're not. I'm educating my younger children about health and wellness, about being at peace in themselves, and that includes questioning the place of alcohol in life, amongst other substances. I don't say this from a pious space, it's from a place of choice for myself and on behalf of my children at this point. What they do as they get older, well, let's wait and see. My answer to should parents let their underage children drink alcohol is a no. I'm wondering what you learned by hearing 4 parents tell you about our relationship to underage children drinking alcohol. Where has this debate left you as you think about your own relationship to alcohol, what you think about underage kids drinking it? I hope you found this tough debate thought-provoking and that it triggers conversation in your home, among your friends, and maybe with your children. Let's close the debate with some final words from my wonderful guests, Kiaya, Casey, and Dave.
So now I got to go teach my children who are in this world where other underage children who are unsupervised are drinking Hennessy. And it's like, okay, well, number 1, you're not supposed to drink without us. Number 2, da-da-da-da-da. Number 3, da-da-da-da-da. And number 4, this is what happens when you drink Hennessy. This is how it makes you feel. This is why we don't drink that. Now, I've never had it. I'm only speaking from my husband's experience. I mean, I think, again, as a child, I did take a swig and I thought it was disgusting, just like Crown is. I thought it was disgusting. But other than that, I've never drank it. I probably haven't drank it since I was like 11, 12. But a lot of underage drinkers drink that. And when I explore a little bit more, apparently they're looking for that high that it gives you. They're looking for that drunkenness, that release that it gives you, because apparently it gives it to you quickly. So for me personally, that tells me, again, they're experiencing something that I need to make sure that my children don't experience, so they don't look for this particular outlet, that they have other outlets. So if they're going through what these children are going through, then let me deal with that.
So what cured me of it was that I married an alcoholic. So my first husband didn't grow out of it. And I didn't enjoy watching his behavior or cleaning up all the vomit. And it played a really painful role in our lives. And he was older than I was. And I very quickly constantly found myself as the only sober person in the room. And I was embarrassed by it. And I was disgusted by his behaviors. And I thought, I don't want to become that. Like, I don't want to grow up to be that. And he was somebody who, when I was a teenager, I met my first husband when I was quite young, and it was sort of all fun and games when it was just teenage rebellion. But when we had adult responsibilities, mortgages to pay, and whatnot, it just really became very unbecoming to witness. And it was not something that I wanted any part of. I didn't want to admit that I ended up marrying a drunk, but I did.
Well, I think explain that anything in excess is bad for you. And do some research as well in the harms of alcohol, and also talk about our own experiences, which is what's helped my son with my own experiences. And that can be the most powerful, by saying that I have experienced myself where this can go. And it's an extremely addictive drug, and it's a progressive drug. And if you're not sensible with it, then it can get out of hand, which can lead on to other things. So I think it's important not to tell them not to do something, but equally coming at it from a place of compassion and understanding, I think will allow them to make their own mind up, which to me is a healthier way, rather than telling them, it's the brew of the devil and don't go near it, because they'd be inquisitive then, wouldn't they, and go, oh, okay. So I think there's a kind way of doing it and an intelligent way of doing it. And that's not by saying they can't do it. It's by educating them in a non-judgmental way, I think, of what really the consequences of alcohol can have.
I'm so glad that you were here for this PWT debate. Our next one lands in September, as we're taking a summer break. When we return, I'll feature lots more parents who'll share their opinions on important and controversial topics. We've got some great ones lined up. In the meantime, if you're not already part of the PWT Substack community, pop the words Parents Who Think Substack into your search engine and it'll come up. Or come on over to our Parents Who Think YouTube page, where you can leave comments on topics we cover. Thanks for being such a great supporter of the show. Take care, everyone.